It's Dana, and how do you say your last name? Is it Skiver?
Skiver.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I mean, first of all, just kind of your thoughts at the end of a very long process, and I can't imagine some of the details in the case that you guys had to go through. I mean, I can't imagine frankly, how hard that would have been.
It was emotionally draining. Some days were, worse than others, as you might imagine. At the very start of the case, I think we were maybe only 2 or 3 days in, and we had to look at very graphic photographs. And that was really difficult. You always think you're prepared, but I don't know if you could ever be prepared to look at something like that, something that will stay with you forever. And then the last 4 days of the trial were extremely emotionally draining. Yeah. But I couldn't have asked for a better group of jurors. We had 18 great people. They made it, as easy as it could be. We had a great group of people.
What kind as this case is going along? I mean, there is so much obviously evidence and so much testimony, but so maybe if we stick bigger picture, but and I want to ask you a couple of questions about sentencing in a minute, but what kind of stood out to you out of this whole process, or what kind of really resonated with you the most as the case was going along? What were some of the biggest take homes for you?
I think the biggest take homes were the text messages and the emails to Lori Vallow between she and Chad. And then they specifically talked about, turning the pain up on the children, giving them something to scream about. Only, 2% left in their body. Even Tammy, she's ready to leave her body. I can feel that, her spirit's almost gone. She's overtaken by this evil demon, become a zombie, have to die type thing. And they did say between the two of them, Lori kept asking, what is the overall plan for the children? Do you have a perfectly orchestrated plan? And when Chad replied that he had a perfectly orchestrated plan for the children, I mean, that hit at home. I mean, that right there, you knew that he was the planner, the puppet master. He was leading everybody.
And as far as him, the idea of him orchestrating, I guess, as opposed to her, we're all jurors fairly resolute with that aspect of it, that he was
the leader. Yeah. And he was absolutely, he was the leader. He was giving the orders, and he just had other people carrying that out.
I guess I understand where this is coming from. It's not very often we get to talk to a juror, somebody who decides in a death penalty case. I mean, they just don't come up as often anymore. And I imagine that's a decision that has to weigh heavily on people. I mean, given obviously some really horrible and gruesome facts in the case, but how difficult a decision was that? What were some of the discussions that were in play for that? And just kind of take me kind of behind the scenes of how that whole process went.
Well, after we decided the guilty verdict, and then we went into the deliberations for the sentencing phase, we were given some very good instructions on this is how we have to carry out these deliberations. There were 8 aggravating circumstances that we were given, and we were given those and had to find if we felt like that aggravating factor was actually met. And if it was met, then you move that to phase 2. There was a lot of discussion around a couple of those, just to make sure that we were all in agreement. And it took a while to go through all those, and we had to go back through our notes, and we, to prove, it was heinous, it was egregious. They did get remuneration. And we were able to bring all 8 of those aggravating factors forward to weigh them against the mitigating factors of, if you watch the trial, there was very little given as mitigating factors that we had to weigh against the aggravating factors. So it did take a while. It is something that will weigh heavily, I think, on each and every single one of us, that we were one of 12 people that convicted somebody to the death sentence. And I don't think that's ever something that will stop weighing heavy on me as a human being. I do have empathy. I do feel bad. I feel bad that in this whole scheme of things, now we're possibly losing another life. It's like, it's just death after death after death. And I'm not saying that, I agree full-heartedly that we made the right decision. The 12 of us that were the deliberators, we absolutely made the right decision. But, it's still not over for this poor family. Unfortunately, they got some closure, but it's still not over. There's going to be appeals. There's going to be execution dates set and gone, and unfortunately, I don't see it being over for quite some time for this poor family. And my heart goes out to each and every one of them.
Just a couple of questions about you personally. How are you dealing with everything? I mean, you talked about it was a lot to deal with at times, and I could see it like kind of come out in you when you're talking about it. But how have you been able to hold up with it? Is it like just some of the details of the case? I mean, I imagine that'll probably stick with you for quite a while. And just your thoughts on that effect on jurors.
It was something that was very difficult to go through. I mean, you come in for the whole jury process and you don't know what jury you're going to be put on and that you're going to be selected for a death penalty case. That was heavy right from the very start. And I'm sure it was just for everybody knowing that we are going to be put in that position to make that decision. The images that we had to see were, forever burned in my memory. I think about those poor children and that poor JJ and what must have been going through his his mind, trusting a human being more than anybody in the world, and here they are doing this to you. The same with Tammy, trusting somebody of 30 some years, and then they're doing this to you. I can't imagine what their last thoughts in life were, and I think that still resonates with me, and I still have a hard time with that. It does resonate with me and does play heavy on my mind that yes, I was one of 12 people that said somebody should die. That, I don't think I'd be a very empathetic person if I said that didn't weigh heavily on me. It does, but I think it was the right decision for the heinous crimes that he committed and orchestrated.
I really appreciate you being willing to chat with me and talk about some of that. Is there anything else that you just like the public, like the people here in Salt Lake that end up watching the story? Is there anything else you'd like them to know that I haven't asked you, or you think it's important to point out?
Maybe to the family that you're still being thought of by each and every one of us jurors. We relived it in 8 weeks. They lived it in 4.5 years. So we didn't relive every detail, but we relived a lot of the worst that they had to live through. And my heart still breaks for every single one of them. I pray for them. I pray that this decision and the ending to this will bring them some closure. Maybe that's the biggest thing, is to know that they were thought of and held very close to our hearts. And Ada County Courthouse, the judge, the marshals, the bailiffs, everybody was absolutely wonderful to us. We couldn't have asked to be treated better.
Daynna, I really appreciate you providing your insight, and thanks so much for being willing to do an interview with me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Lori Horne, I appreciate you being willing to chat with me for just a little bit. Thanks for taking some time out of your night. Just give me some of your thoughts on, I mean, I can't imagine like having to see and like some of the evidence that was presented, and just like, I mean, just such a horrible case. And I mean, that was like pretty much your life, like the last couple of months is just hearing every detail of that case.
Yes. Since March 25th, that's when we reported for jury duty. Just a roller coaster for sure.
What would you say? I mean, and there was so much that obviously got presented, but what would you say? Give me a couple of moments that you feel like maybe like just stand out more to you, either as pivotal or just things that affected you the most. What would you say those are?
I think that as a whole, the jury was pretty affected, of course, on the several days of testimony and pictures of where they found the bodies and the autopsies. But I'm going to go with Friday after verdict, but before sentencing. We got all the victim statements. I think that was probably the roughest day of the whole trial. Just really hearing how this truly impacted so many people.
What was going through your mind with that? I mean, yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to contemplate all of it. I mean, honestly.
There was so many things. There was a handful of things that were kind of tied up, few loose ends, maybe, but not many. I think that they did a really good job of putting everything they had out there, so the decisions, I think, were spot on. They didn't leave us hanging on a lot of information. I mean, there's definitely unknowns. It was probably just having validation to a handful of things that we learned. There was a few people that shed light on, Tammy as a person, where the trial, they kind of made her out to be this really unhealthy, heavy individual. And that was not the case at all. I think she had very normal symptoms for any woman her age, with her life just always on the go and busy. Of course you're tired. And JJ, he's highly functioning. So what if he was autistic? He was still a very active, smart young man, and yet they made him out to be like completely low functioning, not controllable autism. And so I think in the victim statements, it was really good to have them put reality to these individuals on who they really were.
It's not very often that we get to talk to jurors in like a death penalty case. Frankly, I mean, they don't happen all that often. I feel like prosecutors a lot of times will not pursue the death penalty in cases. Just your thoughts on what it was like to be a part of that process. I mean, and just weighing that very heavy decision on, I mean, should this person be sentenced to die? I mean, that's a heavy one. Just your thoughts on how everybody kind of came to terms with that, and how you came to terms with that in your own mind, and the conclusion you guys came to.
So, I mean, obviously I can't speak for everyone else. I was one of the 5 alternates. And then, of course, there were 12 of us that were in there that had to make the final decision. Of course, we were in the trial the entire time for every single thing together, except for those so many hours of deliberation. But I'm really confident that it was unanimous amongst alternates and the 12 that were in there. We are very supportive of and appreciative of the decisions that the 12 made. It was really hard, but at the end, I think that the judge made that part of it easier for us with his instructions. They were very specific, so they were able to go through the list and answer questions, little detailed questions. And at the end, if you've said yes to all of these things, then here's your verdict. If you've said yes to all these things, then it's the death penalty. If you said no to something, then it's not. So they did seem to have that in their, I don't know if you say in their favor or in their court, that the instructions and the laws were very well set out, and the prosecution really put so many facts. We were just flooded with evidence. So there really wasn't another option. There wasn't another valid choice. So I fully support what the 12 of them decided.
I didn't realize you were an alternate, but yeah, I mean, you still have to go along through the whole thing and be basically be versed on the entire case. Essentially, I mean, whether you're called an alternate or not, you're essentially a juror for the whole duration,
The entire thing. And then we still had to sit and not talk while they were deliberating, which was so painful. And be separated and not knowing, the turmoil they were going through. Can just imagine. And then we all go back into court together to finish up with victim statements and everything. And then of course separated again for a short while they finish deliberating. And it has been a relief to talk to a handful of them since then, just so that they know we support their decision. And so it's been tough for sure. It's just an emotional roller coaster.
If there's something that you feel like is most important to communicate, as far as your role in this and everybody and jurors' role in this, what do you think is most important for like people like, let's say, watching in Salt Lake City at 10 o'clock tonight? What do you think is most important for people to understand?
For being the juror, or
just anything top of mind for you? They're like, yeah, I wish people would know this about what we did or about the proceeding. Is there anything that really stands out to you that way?
I don't know. I think that every case is probably different and every experience is different for the jurors. This one was just extremely long and had so many different aspects to it. It wasn't just about murders. It was about the conspiracy and about the false ideas of how a religion, you can't be a man of God and then do everything opposite in how you live. That was just sad to portray any religion in a manner that is completely against anything, God would wish for us. There wasn't a protector where there should have been one. There wasn't somebody looking out for the lives of these innocent individuals when there should have been.
Sorry, didn't mean to.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe answer this for me before I let you go, but and I got to hurry and put something on the air here at 10, but just the fact that, and I'm not sure exactly how the system works in Idaho versus, let's say, like Utah, but I mean, you're getting called to a jury, and I assume, so it's probably like a district court, so maybe it's like a more serious crime, but then finding out that you're covering like a death penalty case. I mean, it very easily, maybe it could have been a robbery or something, or maybe like a felony burglary case, and just finding out that it was this one. I mean, what was that like, just going through all of that? I mean, that must have been crazy.
That was shocking. I've been called several times to report for jury duty, never been on a jury before. And I was sitting in front of less than 10 feet away from Chad Daybell and didn't realize who it was until the judge started reading the case and said his name. And then it hit me, and I'm sure my face was like a billboard with the shock that, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is what I'm in here for. I don't think any of us expected to be called for this trial. It seemed to me that all 18 of us were, individuals that aren't necessarily up on the news. We go to bed earlier, we get up early, we all go to work. We're busy with our own lives and our own kids. So it was definitely shocking, out of 1,800 people, for us to be the 18 that were chosen.
I appreciate you being willing to share some of your experience with me. I know it's a little bit abbreviated. We're just trying to get something on the air. I appreciate you chatting with me tonight, and thanks so much. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, our hearts go out to, the families. And I do believe you have a lot of loved ones there in that area that were directly affected. And I hope that this helps them in some way.
Lori, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Yep.